So, you're excited to start building web apps with something like Flask, right? Awesome. But before you dive in, I want to share a strategy that's going to make your whole journey way faster and a lot less frustrating. It's all about mastering data before you even think about a web page. Let's get right into it.
I love this quote because it's the perfect way to think about this. Building a Flask app is like building a house. It's this big, cool project. But what's a house made of? Bricks. And in programming, the data is your bricks. Learning how to create and manage them is the absolute non-negotiable first step.
All right, so let's start with what I like to call the heartbeat of every single app out there. This is the big why behind our entire strategy, the fundamental idea that powers everything from a simple to-do list to Instagram. And I mean every app. Think about it for a sec. When you post a photo, check your bank account, or add a song to a playlist, what are you doing? You're managing information. And behind the scenes, all those apps are using the exact same playbook to get it done.
And that universal playbook has a name, CRUD. Now, this isn't some scary, complicated jargon. It just stands for create, read, update, and delete. These are the 4 basic moves that make up the heartbeat of pretty much any app you can think of.
To make this crystal clear, just think about a school locker. When you put a new book inside, you're creating data. When you open the door to see what you've got, you're reading it. If you scratch out an old label on a folder and write a new one, that's an update. And of course, when you take a book out for class, you're deleting it. Simple, right? That is literally all CRUD is.
Okay, so now we know what CRUD is, but let's talk strategy. Why is it so important to master this pattern by itself before we even start talking about websites?
And I know what you're probably thinking. Come on, I just want to build the cool web pages. Can't I learn this data stuff while I'm learning Flask? It's a totally fair question, but trust me, there's a really good reason to do it this way.
Here's the deal. When you learn to handle data separately from web design, you're not trying to juggle 2 complicated things at once. You get to laser focus on this core data cycle, which builds some serious foundational confidence. You stop just memorizing what CRUD stands for, and you actually start doing it.
And that gets to the real point of all this. It's not about passing a vocabulary test. It's about building a simple little program where you get a hands-on, intuitive feel for how data is born, how it's looked at, how it's changed, and how it's removed. That feeling, that's what makes you a real developer.
Okay, so we need to practice CRUD, but what tool are we going to use to actually store our information? Well, that brings us to the first stop on our little learning journey.
We're going to start with JSON. And if you've ever used a Python list or a dictionary, JSON is going to look super familiar. It's really just a simple, text-based way to organize data that's incredibly easy for both people and computers to understand.
But here's the real magic of why we start with JSON. It's totally transparent. You can literally open the JSON file in any text editor and see your data sitting right there. For a beginner, this is huge. It creates this instant, visual connection between your code and the stuff it's saving.
The whole system works just like a simple notebook. You'll have a function, we can call it load data, that just opens the notebook to read what's on the page. Then you'll have another one, save data, that basically rips out the old page and writes a brand new, updated one. That's the entire model. Simple and effective.
So, once you've completely nailed down the CRUD pattern with the beautiful simplicity of JSON, you're going to be ready to level up. It's time to pick up a much more powerful, professional-grade tool.
And that brings us to SQL. This chart lays out the whole learning path perfectly. You start with JSON because it's simple and you can see everything. But when your app needs to grow up, when you need rules or super fast searching, or you need to handle tons of people using it at once, that's when you graduate to SQL.
This right here is the whole strategy in a single sentence. We use JSON to master the shape and the feel of CRUD. Once that becomes second nature, you can take that exact same logic and apply it to a heavy hitter like SQL. The pattern doesn't change, just the tool you're using.
So we've learned the pattern with JSON. We've leveled up to SQL. What does this all actually mean when we finally circle back to our original goal, building with Flask? And here it is, the big payoff. By the time you type import Flask for the first time, the entire tricky problem of managing your data is already solved. You're not going to be stressing about how to save user info while also trying to figure out how web templates work. You've split the problems in 2.
Seriously, you'll walk in on day 1 already knowing exactly how to handle your app's data. And it won't matter if your Flask app uses a simple JSON file or a massive SQL database, the core CRUD logic you've already mastered will be exactly the same.
So please remember this. This approach isn't a detour.
It's a shortcut. The absolute fastest way to become a confident developer is to nail down the data pattern first, then apply that awesome new skill to a web framework. That's how you build things on a foundation that won't crumble.
By focusing on this foundation, you're not just learning to write a few lines of code, you're learning how to actually build things properly. You're getting ready to build that house, one solid brick at a time. The only real question left is, are you ready to make your first one?